secret is I just smile and say, live for today. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the sun came up and I gotta say, see it in a whole new way. I'm sitting on top of the world, on top of the world, on top of the world. I'm sitting on top of the world.
Well, look-a here, look-a here. Welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. And today we have someone that's going to help you learn a few things. But first, let's hear what she's learned over the years. Miss Molly McPherson, my amazing author friend, and yes, I am biased. She is a friend of mine that I chat with on a regular basis. I can say on our PR lunch hours on Fridays. Hopefully you guys will join us one day. But today we want to talk about her book, some things that she's learned, and she's going to lace us with a few things too. So Miss Molly, introduce yourself to the people and let them know what you do and how long you've been doing it.
Tanya, who I am is someone who is thrilled that you and Twitter Spaces have dropped into my life. I mean, honestly, I look forward to every Friday joining the group that you put together to talk about PR topics. And the reason why you're one of my favorite people, and I just posted this on LinkedIn, you can talk about serious matters, we can talk about political matters, and then you can just ease into pop culture so quickly. And I love people like that. You're speaking my PR love language. But I mean, to sum me up in a nutshell, I'm an educator. I am an educator. I'm an educator via my work in public relations and crisis management. You know, my goal is not just that, to help people, certainly, but it's to teach them how to manage, in this environment that we're in. And then certainly a big part of who I am. I mean, I'm also, I'm a mother. I have 4 teenagers. I'm a dog mother. I'm an author. I was a former military spouse, which meant I moved around a lot, so I understand the sacrifice and service to duty. My daughter's at a service academy right now. And I worked for FEMA for a number of years. So I feel like teaching and giving at your core is really what I'm all about. But I'm all about this conversation right now, right here, Tanya.
That is a total in the moment saying. I love that. So listen, I want you to take me back a little bit. You said your daughter, how old is she and what is she doing? And how does that work? Because, it sounds like she's old enough for y'all to bump heads sometimes. Tell me about that, Mom.
Well, let me add a little seasoning to it. I don't
Please
just
do.
have 4 teenagers. I had 4 teenagers in 3 years. And I was on my own. I was a military spouse. The spouse was underway with the U.S. Coast Guard, and I was living on my own in Cape Cod. Pregnant with twins.
What?
So I had
Wait a minute. You have twins?
Yes, I had twins.
You're twins.
You have twins as well? How old are your twins?
Because they're 11. So I'm going to need some education on you for how to survive the teen years with twins. Teens with twins, twin teens. Yes, I'm going to need some help, girl.
Here's the secret. The twins are my easiest ones because they have each other. It's a boy-girl duo. It's fabulous. They're the Wonder
Boy, girl, too.
The Wonder Twins. Really?
Oh, my God.
Wonder Twins are the best. They're the best. Yeah. So, all my kids are good, but they're busy. I'm a soccer mom. I'm a hockey mom. I'm like doing all of it. But yeah, my daughter, big athlete, Rory, love her to death. But yeah, she's sports was a big part of it. She's playing soccer, playing lacrosse, but also serving her country, which is wonderful. So right now she's in the middle of the Atlantic, sailing from the Azores to New Zealand. No, not New Zealand, Iceland. So.
Wow. So you are educating and raising these amazing young people. Mm-hmm. Wow. In this field, which is insane.
I love this field, though. I love it.
Too, but it's so insane.
It's insane, but one of the best reasons why I like it, and this ties into being a mother, it offers the best dinner time conversation or car conversation. My son and I were down we were in Massachusetts at soccer tournaments all weekend. So there's a lot of car time with his mom, and we could just talk about current events, and he understands more than really all my kids, like what I do. None of my kids understand what I do. Like teachers will ask, "What's your mom do?" I'm like, I don't know. Something with PR and social media. Like they don't get it. They don't fully get it. But my son Connor gets it. He knows the cancel culture. He knows what it means.
Mm.
So we have these very good conversations. So one person understands me in my life.
So how did you get in this field? Tell me that. What of all the things that someone like you, tenacious, extroverted, smart as a whip, how did you get in this field?
Oh, I can tell you're in PR, Tanya. Certainly. Thank you. Probably like many people who work in PR or journalism, you don't just fall into it, you're born into it. I mean,
Yeah.
I loved journalism and news and crime and following it just at the youngest age possible. It's one of my first memories is watching television news. So I always wanted to be either a journalist or an FBI agent.
Mhm.
I very close to being an FBI agent. I was all the way to the end in the Boston field office, but because it was a military marriage and I had to move, my application, I had to, the application got yanked. So in my alt life, I'm an FBI agent somewhere. But at any rate, but I always worked around news, and I went to Boston University in the 90s for at
Mm.
their comm school, which was a great education, but it was at the time when the internet was just coming onto the scene. My class, the first class to have an email account. I mean, to show how
Mm.
dated that is. But I always knew, so I had a background, I did work in, television, radio. I love just the television industry. I just love the media industry. But I knew back then that, the internet was not only a new communication channel, but it was gonna be an incredibly powerful one, and it was going to be, woven into all the other mediums. So newspaper, television, radio, like, I knew this was all going to weave together, and I've
Mhm.
never lost that. And my job, even today, years later, decades later, I am still using the same ideas that I had back in graduate school at Boston University.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I
yeah, so
love that. So now you have niched it down, it seems, to crisis PR. Now,
I have. Yeah, I mean, certainly I'd say from a branding point of view, I do that, but I'm really, really in crisis mitigation because I don't
mm,
want people to experience a crisis. I'll use crisis as examples. Like I'll use them as case studies because they're everywhere every day. I mean, we talk about it on Fridays. I
all the
love
time.
to always drop in these crisis stories, and you never miss a trick on that, which is why I love you because you follow the same stuff that I follow. But it's the crisis mitigation piece, and that speaks to my time working for FEMA when I worked for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And my time there was coming out of Hurricane Katrina, which, if you think
Hmm.
of a crisis for a federal agency, I mean, anyone can go back to that time during FEMA. But it also shaped, I went back to my BU days and remembered, okay, the internet. And we were still working at that time in the traditional media space. The Washington Post at my job had so much weight. They had so much authority in what the New York Times said and what the nightly news said. I just remember it was like news, it was television news, broadcast news, and newspaper.
Yeah.
But the reputation was just in the toilet. It was the worst reputation. But our stakeholders, the people who we helped displace from storms, wildfires, whatever it was, they loved us. So I thought there's a disconnect here. What can connect it? And before social media was there, I knew it was online media. Like I knew it was digital, but I didn't know quite how. And then I had asked my supervisors, my bosses essentially, hey, I have an idea in my head. Would you let me go out and try something? Which is very unusual in the federal government that they allow you
Right.
to do that. But
Yes.
they said, go ahead. And I became a backpack journalist and I found a disaster and I started interviewing people, put it on video, and we came back and turned it into little vignettes, and that turned into the social media program there because that's what it was, like quick little video vignettes where we own our own message and put it on.
Hmm.
That's never left me. So I still stand by that. So when I work with clients, it's about how do you write your own story?
Educate our audience a little more, dummy it down just a little because we do have some young people that actually watch that are just getting into PR. Crisis mitigation. Walk me through what that is.
Well, for young people, I find that I have to explain what Hurricane Katrina was because you know what? Like a lot of people don't remember. Oh my gosh. I love young people going into communications. And I'll say this that I think it's like a field that so many people look down on. It's like one of those squishy degrees. but now, and if we learned anything coming out of COVID-19, communications, public relations, no matter what your job is, social media, you deserve a seat at the table because you are the primary person that is putting the message out there and putting in any type of crisis mitigations, which that's mitigation's a FEMA word, an emergency management word,
Yes.
meaning we need to prevent something from happening. And how do we prevent it? And good communications always prevents a crisis. It's the bad communications that start one.
Well, I'm going to bring this up this week, but since I have you and we're talking about mitigation and maybe doing some proactive PR before you have to do crisis PR, what do you think about the Naomi issue this past week? And could it have been handled better by the media or by her PR person? Give me your thoughts on that.
Oh, Naomi Osaka. So that is such an interesting story. And one of the reasons why it stuck with me, it hit over the weekend. And it
Mhm.
was a story that I did not have an immediate reaction to. I thought I need to think and pause on this one because the first stories and I love you for bringing this up. I knew you would. That's why I was ready for it. I could predict you. Is that this was a story that I thought, this is weird. Like usually I feel as if I fall in the predictable side of a news story because it's like there's a natural pattern that always happens. Like if you're bad, you get canceled or people will call you out, but if you're good, you won't. But here Naomi was being sidelined, if you will. She was being trashed. Like people were coming down on her and calling out her for being a narcissist. And it didn't sit with me. I thought, no, there's something else here, but what is it? And I was trying to form my opinion. And what I recognized, I thought she's going to come out on top on this one. And here's the reason why. She was bucking a system because press conferences, you're always supposed to do press conferences. That's how it's always been. And sports, as much as we love the rise of female athletes, it's still a male dominated industry. But here you have a female, a young female, a minority female,
Mm.
and a female who is a very strong social presence, which isn't traditional. Even though we think social media is traditional, it still isn't, because a lot of people working today in brands, they don't fully understand it. It's still like a woo power. And she was also and here's why I knew she was gonna come out on top. She was talking about, through all of it, she's talking about mental health. Like you can't call out someone who's calling out what she felt was like an abusive forum. And also the piece is she was talking about press conferences. And with the exception of sports, press conferences don't have the weight that they once had, where people have to sit down at a certain time and come up to the mic and speak to reporters and call on reporters. The COVID eliminated that. President Trump really eliminated that. He became
Yes.
his own spokesperson. So what happened with her? I don't know if she was savvy or deft enough, or if this is just like a coincidence, but she picked an issue that was an antiquated issue, the press conference. So
Mhm.
either it's brilliant or it's just like the natural order. But I am all in on what she said, which was the power of no more. And I'm not going to let you bully me into doing something just because of the status quo. So I think this case is a touchstone case.
Ma'am, only because I have you will I even go to this depth. But spoiler alert, I have a little blog coming out about this, but I want to touch on it with you. And you have kids that were athletes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how many kids do you know grow up to be amazing at a sport and they were thinking about a mic and a press conference? So the amount of stress and strife that comes with what society has decided to put on these athletes seem to be something that is only a monetization for the companies and the brands that control these conferences.
Right.
So while we're entering into this conversation, all I'm thinking about is my kids. But no
Mm-hmm.
one's thinking about it from that perspective. How hard, how much sacrifice they have to make in order to get to the point where they're an elite athlete. Now you have this added level of pressure because these companies are paying them. But is that what they really signed up for? And how long do we force people into situations for the monetization of brands at the sacrifice of their mental health?
Oh, without a doubt. And Tanya, you're touching on something I know you already know about as well. I mean, sports and taking advantage of athletes for profit. You just have to go down a few steps. Go to college sports. Look what's happening there. These athletes want to own their own brand. Look at what happened with March Madness and the locker rooms where the women, one TikTok video
One.
one TikTok video, and now they're scrambling, about the inequality of a locker room at March Madness, because this generation and generation millennials set the path, but Gen Z gets this more than anything, is the power of monetizing their own brand and how their own brand is in their own hands, right?
Yes.
They don't need these big companies and these big wigs and these big super agents telling them that they're going to make money off of them. They're
Right.
writing their own rules. And you know what? They should. That's what this story, in my opinion, is that young people, athletes are finally saying, no, these are our rules. It's our
Yep.
brand. It's our blood, sweat, and tears. We're going to earn something from it, not
Absolutely.
big business.
Absolutely. So when these brands, these companies come to you because you are the fix-it queen, what is your advice? And not just this in this situation, but usually when companies come to you and they're struggling, their reputation has been mullied. How do you get started with them? And who is the right client to bring to you?
It's so interesting. Someone reached out to me on Twitter, DM this morning asking about, my rates and who I work with, basically the same question. And for the first time ever, I wrote down that I choose who my clients are
Mm,
based on the alignment of missions and values. And I ended it with, I earned it, and I put an emoji to it there too. But frankly, I did. I'm not going to work for someone whose values I don't believe in anymore. I have to feel that they're on the right side of it. And part of it too is self-preservation, because you cannot survive if you are trying to. This isn't the fix-it days of the 80s, where you buy it, where you can hire a spin master, or
yes.
a fixer to come in. I'm not going to fix the external environment. I fix the internal environment and say, okay, these are the changes that you all need to make. This is what is not sitting with your publics right now. But yeah, so I do both. I have retainer clients, certainly. I have in a number of different industries, and I do, communication and crisis plans, but also I'm making the transition too, because of COVID. I'm putting a lot of my work online. I do a lot of training, and
Mhm.
I'm creating a master class that's actually coming out. It's coming out next week, where for people who are in offices where they're kind of running it on their own, or business who are they might just have one person, or an owner that wants to take ownership of it. So I'm putting a lot of my work into an online learning environment, because people can do that now. So I'm hoping that I can help people and serve people that way as well.
Well, listen, you're talking about culture change. So I have to ask you, are you or have you been involved in any D&I work? And how has that felt to you?
Oh, D&I, oh my gosh, talk about a change even for myself with this. So about a year and a half ago on my podcast, I interviewed Jeffrey Blunt. He's an author, but he's a former NBC News director. He directed Meet the Press and NBC Nightly News out of Washington, D.C., and he's written a number of books. And I asked him a question. The title of the podcast was, "How do you speak about race without sounding like a racist?" And I remembered at the time I had said to him, because I grew up in the Twin Cities, I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I said this, and now I can't believe that I said that. But I was just being honest. You'll laugh too, probably. But diversity where I grew up was growing up, Irish Catholic and in St. Paul, and knowing a Lutheran from Minnesota. I mean, as pathetic, and it's such a Minnesotan statement. I mean, my goodness. But it's so true. I didn't grow up with it, right? But here we are. Now it's like Minneapolis. Geez, is there a hotbed for what has happened
Right.
with diversity now? Okay. So when George Floyd happened, I could see it from a public relations point of view, but then a personal point of view. Like, that's my town. Like,
Yeah.
that's all my family and friends live there. But it all falls, it's just like Naomi Osaka. It's no different. It's when people are finally saying enough. Okay. And I appreciate you asking me. I mean, I'm white, you're black. You asking me is going to be different than, you asking someone who's black. But I, for the first time, have more empathy for it than I've ever understood. It's not just about being black, it's about being oppressed. It's about living under that oppression. And when people say enough, whether it's boycotting a press conference or marching in the streets of Minneapolis or around the country, we're saying enough. And other companies need to follow this. And when the D&I issue happened with George Floyd, I had people calling me saying, my CEO doesn't want to say anything. How do we say something without not saying anything? I said, well, then I am not the right person to talk to about this, because that's not what I'm about. I'm about helping you say something, create the right response to stay at the right time, which is this time now.
Have you given someone advice, counsel, that they just were absolutely non-receptive of? And what was that like?
Ooh, click, 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 going through my brain. Going through my brain.
Leave it to me. Sorry.
No, it's such a good question. Here is the brick wall that I run into the most, without a doubt. And it's the same archetype of the person who always is knocking me into that wall. It's someone who will tell me that social media is not quite as powerful as I make it out to be. And they will tell me that our customers, our members, our stakeholders, whoever it is, they're not on to, they don't use social media that much. Or I'm on there and we don't see anyone on it. It's explaining this idea that social media is not just a bunch of young kids on a phone, posting videos.
Right.
It is a megaphone for your customer to finally be heard, for good and for bad. You want to embrace social media. And so I know it's fear speaking. It's businesses or organizations who don't want to either invest in it, or more important, or more likely, they don't want to give their customers a voice to complain. That's what they worry about. And so that's why we don't see eye to eye on that. And I tell them, and oftentimes I'd say, okay, that's fine. I'll just give you my last word and then we'll move on. And then they always come back and say, oh, guess what happened? Let me guess. Let's go back to that conversation that we had.
So almost like you, similarly, when someone asked me one of the things I love most about being an entrepreneur, I was like, well, I get to fire my clients if I don't want them.
Yeah.
If they ain't want to act right.
Right. Yeah. I've never fired, but I've never fought, right? Like, I'm not going to fight for someone's dollar. I'm not going to fight for it. Again, I've earned it. You know what I mean? There's plenty.
I love that. I've earned it. Yeah. How long did it take you to recognize that?
It was not anything that I recognized. It was something that was thrust on me. This past week on my podcast, I shared a rather vulnerable podcast about this idea of being indestructible. And I discussed that, for many years I was a military spouse and I had to sacrifice, sacrifice my career, and, over and over and over again. And I was put in a position of having to start my business as an entrepreneur because I had no choice. I was very happily working for the federal government, working for FEMA. I loved my job. I mean, please, the opportunity to run social media for a federal agency was just like dream job, capital D, capital J. But I had to give it up. I had no choice. So I was kind of forced into business. But where the success came from is I never chased a dollar, or whenever I did chase a dollar or chase marketing funnels or whatever, it never felt right. Like, whenever something doesn't feel right, I just stop it and I follow my heart and what feels right. And I've never, my gut has never let me down on that.
I love that. Has entrepreneurship been difficult for you, or was it kind of a a natural thing. Some people struggle with it. There are people that get into it and think, oh, I'm going to have my own business so I can have more free time. I mean, some of those elements of owning a business, growing a business takes a lot. Was it a natural movement for you, or did you struggle, and where did you struggle at?
Oh, thanks for that question. I love talking entrepreneurship, especially with women and especially with minorities. I mean, we're a minority, so it's more difficult for
Yeah.
us to succeed in this business. You know, we're fighting to get the same pay as everyone else,
Yep.
and as men, and but I will say I was made for this. And this is, years of being a military spouse, of formerly being a spouse, is serving others. I mean, I've been serving others for a long time. So there is that natural fit. But I do love the ownership of my life. I love that I don't have to ask anyone's permission to fulfill my values, my value system, to do what I want to do and how to help people. The buck stops with me, and it feels good. Even though I have a team and I have other people, it's not just my way or the highway. It's very collaborative with my team, but I just love the freedom of it. I love that I'm available for my kids. I love that I can be a full on soccer, hockey, whatever mom, all the lacrosse mom, like all the things, this. But I just love that I can grow and pivot, and I can follow what's happening. I mean,
Mhm.
we're in a crisis of a value system right now, a crisis
Yeah.
of character. I mean, so my business, I just decided, like, oh, I think I'm going to talk about indestructibility now, and like, here I am. So
I
that's what
love
I
it.
like about it.
Speaking of indestructibility, let's get into that book, ma'am. You want to show us the cover and tell us why being an author, hey, tell us why being an
Indestructible.
author, actually put that up there one more time for me. Yes,
Yeah.
I love yellow.
Indestructible.
Why
Yeah. I
yellow?
Oh gosh, putting a book together, like most difficult part of this book, other than writing it during COVID-19, with 4 kids and a dog, was the title, the cover, the subtitle. Any author will tell you that. Like, that's where all the guts go. Yellow is like the warning color. Like, every crisis book is red. Every crisis book is red, and I didn't want red because I'm not in crisis. We're preventing a crisis. So yellow's the color of crisis mitigation. And this is like the Facebook colors. It's like pressing its social media stamp.
Yes,
So
I like that. I love. Okay, but being an author is difficult. So what was that about? Like, you just keep adding all these things to your life that are not easy. So walk me through that decision.
I mean, part wanting to serve, and then part just a natural order of, I do a lot of work as a speaker. I love public speaking. I love it because you can serve very quickly,
You don't say.
and you just get that yeah. And you can, and the audience interaction, and you just feed off of it. It's like my supply. Because you can help people in real time, and you can see it, right there. So I love it. And I just know, that having a book, would help that. So just from a business strategic point of view, there's that, just being an author helps that. But also, it just gave me a voice that I had to own it. Like, I had to commit myself to a book and put my thoughts and words on the page and then sell it. There is nothing more vulnerable than writing a book about your thoughts and your ideas.
Mm.
And that's the whole piece of being instructable. I mean, that's the secret of the book. The secret to indestructibility is vulnerability. It's showing people your true self and who you are, and that will always protect you. It's when you hide or shield or blame or point in the other direction, that's when you become destructible. That's when people can bring you down.
That's why I love you. I just do. You have a passage that you're going to read because I want all of our PR pros and even some of you business owners that think you don't need PR. Let me tell you, you want to implement some type of PR strategy, communication strategy in your company, because if you don't be proactive, you will have to be reactive with some crisis PR. So without further ado, I'm going to let Molly read a little something and we're going to get into it.
the piece of the book where the book is a bit of a journey. I let people off the hook. I tell them it's okay if you don't fully understand technology. There are people who are digital natives, of course, but then there's digital misfits. It's people who don't feel that they fully understand something. And yes, it's a ripoff of the Island of Misfits toys on Rudolph. But I guide people through the steps of becoming more invincible, more indestructible. It's like building their confidence, and that's the subtitle. It's like how to respond with confidence. So in chapter 7 at this point in the book, I'm discussing the pillars of indestructibility. So I want to read like 2 paragraphs before I explain what the pillars are. The secret to surviving and thriving when operating a brand, managing your own brand or reputation, or running a business without running afoul of an online mob is following a set of principles that strengthen the character of a person and, by extension, their brand, reputation, or business. There are 7 pillars of indestructibility: honesty, humility, genuineness, transparency, responsiveness, relevance, and accountability. Leading with these core values will help you navigate the new environment and digital landscape in ways that older, outdated paradigms will not. It's a simple way of saying if you lead with your values, if you lead with the mission statement of being open and honest and transparent, the places where you feel the most vulnerable, in truth, they make you indestructible because people respond to honesty and transparency. It builds you up. And so indestructibility is not just making yourself strong. If something does happen in your business, if your business is experiencing a crisis and there is a setback and there is a crisis, not only can you build yourself up if it's based off of truth, but your customers, your stakeholders, your audiences, your fans, your followers, the people who follow you, they'll build you back up. They will put you back together. Those are the people who survive the cancel culture and being called out. Those are the people who are indestructible.
Older, outdated paradigms. So
Mm.
what you're saying is opposed to what? What are those older, outdated paradigms that people need to veer away from?
Oh, excellent follow-up question, Tanya. An older, outdated paradigm, and I talk about this in the book as well. It's the day and age, and I know you will know this, is when you could get out of a story by not picking up a phone from a reporter. You could let a secretary answer that call. You could decide that you're going to wait all day for a response because the deadline for the newspaper is at 4:20
Right.
and the nightly news doesn't come on until 6:20. So we have all day to think about it. And when we do release our response, because it's not in real time, we can take a stand, we can spin all we want. What has been so people still operate in that mindset. A lot of leaders still operate in that mindset that they can still get away with things, thinking they can spin things out of the way, that no one will understand it. Or if someone just says, "Oh, I'm not a liar," oh, there's going to be millions of people who will tell you otherwise. The new paradigm is social media. It's two-way communication. And it's not just one side of it, putting out a story. It's multiple people on the other side that will not only give you their version of your story, they'll give you a dollop of their opinion as well. And they are the ones who are deciding your outcome. The people who understand that paradigm shift are the people who succeed in this environment. The people who grab on to that old traditional way of communicating, they are as vulnerable as they can possibly be. It is as risky of a position as you can be. And the more closed in, it's counterintuitive, but the more closed in you are, the more at risk you are. The more open you are, the safer you are.
I love that. When are you coming to California? When are we hanging out?
Oh, you're LA, obviously. You're LA, right?
Redondo
I
Beach.
so being so being the Midwest East Coast person, I thought, oh, West Coast. Before COVID, I was in California, and I said, oh, I could live here. Like I love
Hmm.
it out there. I love it. I will get out there. I do travel a lot. My travel schedule's starting to is starting to get starting to pick up again. The kids are older, so definitely. As soon as I'm out there, you and I are getting together for
I'm gonna
those
hold you to that.
lessons. Oh, without a doubt.
I'm gonna hold you to that. So what's next for you? I mean, man, your kids are getting older. You sound like you're about to be empty nesting. You got the book, your business is growing. I mean, ma'am, what's next for you?
Ma'am, what's next to me is, yeah, my kids are growing. I love being here for them, but once they are officially out of the nest, it's just me and my dog, and which is great. And I was even thinking, man, like I could go on the road with my dog. I could go on I could do my workshops, my speaking gigs just with my
You know,
dog. Is gonna get
they
me
have
there.
whole dog menus, pet menus out here at our restaurant. So bring your
Oh,
fur baby.
do they really?
Girl,
Oh,
yes.
that's fantastic. Oh, we only have Dairy Queen doggy cups. Um, yeah, so I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. I think I'm gonna do this, to the end. I love the work that I do, and I'm always gonna morph into different areas. So as I said, like right now, I'm launching a master class with a VIP section of being able to work with me. Kind of, it's like it's a communication plan. It's helping people run through a communication or crisis plan, and they can hire me to kind of work with them as their
With
trusted
them.
guide if they like, and then speak, and then keep up with my podcast, which I love, write another book, but just keep doing it, just keep doing it, helping people.
So listen, we talked about Naomi, we've talked about a few things, but since I want to ask you this, in this business, we talk about this in our PR lunch hours on Fridays. This business can be a little isolating. So what do you do to maintain your mental health?
Cry every night before I go to bed. When I'm on my Peloton, I cry. No. My mental health. Oh, well, that's a whole nother we could talk. We could talk. No, anyone wants to know, listen to my podcast this week. They'll get more insight into my life. But
Oh, I
it's
love
so
it.
important. Like mental health is so important. And that's why the Naomi story really stuck with me too. I hold such a value on mental and physical health because they're both one and the same. I appreciate. I'm a big runner. I was a marathon runner before. Side story, and I mentioned this in my book. When I was working for FEMA, I was run over at a hurricane down in Houston. I was run over, and a van crushed my foot and my marathon dreams. I was training for a marathon at that point, so I can't run the miles that I used to. But running, Peloton, hiking, dogs, kids, keeping active, meditating, praying, because I'm a Catholic who who will still, despite the crisis of the whole church, I will still stay with you, Catholic Church. No, but the mental piece of it, Tanya, you're so right, is so important. Like you have to take care of it's really like a business lesson, right? You have to take care of yourself before you can help others. So make sure that you have a well-run organization that's healthy in spirit and in mind and in body, if you will.
So people ask me like, how do you get up at 4 a.m? You work out and you work and you got all these kids and you do this stuff. And I was like, I'm Nike, just do it. Okay. Because that is our only time to be isolated, to have our own thoughts. We work with clients that try to tell us what we're telling them ain't reality. And everything in the news is like faux reality. I'm like, I need a good 2 hours to myself in my
Right.
reality before I deal with the rest of you all. So it sounds like you do the same thing, as you take time for yourself, and that's usually to take care of your physical, and it helps us battle through the mental.
You don't want me to tell you who you just sounded like right now, do you?
I'm
At 4
listening.
a.m. So another little crazy deep dive I did this weekend this is a way aside, but we've talked about it on the Twitter Spaces, is I watched a video because charting the crisis of Rachel Hollis, and I
Mm-hmm.
watched one of her videos where she gets up at 4 a.m. It was like the precursor to the unrelatable. It's like, I get up at 4 and I get my power drink and I do this because you won't succeed unless you do this. So the difference between you and I is we do it for self-preservation, so we can,
Yes.
because we need to do it for ourselves so we can serve others. Rachel Hollis did it to serve herself.
Oh my God.
But if you go back and watch all those old videos, it's like you could see it, you could spot it, it's there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I'm with you. We get up early because that's where we that's where we get our strength, right? Like
Yep.
that's where we collect our superpower to go for the day. And I am no different than you. I am up and at 'em early, unless I've been on TikTok too late and then I have to sleep in just a little.
Then there's that. But we're going to have to talk about that. No, so let the people know how they can keep up with you. I saw someone already said, where's my girl at? Jennifer Jost, thank you. She said she already signed up for your newsletter. And I'm thinking that many people that hear you are going to want to tap into what you have to say, your book. Tell them, give them the good information.
Oh, Jennifer, thank you. You will be getting my my weekly email. Of course, I tend I have a podcast that comes out every week, the Confident Communications Podcast. It's helping communicators find find the right response at the right time and delivering it on the right channel, which is really changing every day, isn't it? So there's the weekly podcast also tomorrow, which we're live right now, but it will be timestamped. But tomorrow I'm doing a webinar, a live webinar about how to respond, to social media critics, the difference between a critic and a troll and the value of it. And so how to look at social media. And then I'm launching this masterclass, which is my baby, my fifth. Well, my dog's my fifth baby. I guess it's my sixth baby. But this masterclass is just putting my heart and soul into helping more people that I can't do one-on-one. It's videos. It's a lot of videos. It's workbooks. But it's a real time. It helps you with real time crises. Like, so if you're going through something, you can run through this blueprint that you're provided. You can just pull it out and run through it to help you get through that crisis. And this masterclass was born from a COVID-19 communicators kit that I launched last March when we all lost our business, right? Like I lost most of my business in 3 days, but I just decided to put all my resources online just for communicators to help them. And what happened? This community formed and all these people kind of came in and I said, there's something here. And so that's what this is. So that's what I'm doing.
I appreciate that. Social media at Molly?
Oh, well, my number one, it's Twitter. We love our Twitter, don't we?
Yes.
Love it. And we love Twitter Spaces at noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time for your Twitter Spaces. I'm on Twitter at Molly McPherson, Instagram Molly.McPherson, and then Facebook. Oh my gosh, I had
TikTok.
Well, okay, I'll tell you this on TikTok. I have a private account. I go too deep on it, but this fall, against my children's begging and wishing, I'm going to create a public TikTok account, but I'm going to bring my listeners with me, my followers with me, because I'm Gen X. It is the Gen X guide to TikTok because just the algorithms are in our favor. That's for one. So this is where being older has its benefits. But also that is a hotbed of where crises are starting to happen right now because people don't have their brands, and I need to go deep in it. So if anyone wants to join me on that this fall, we're all going to do it together. We're going to start on TikTok at the same time.
I'm in because I'm older.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it, right? We'll do it. We'll talk about it on Twitter Spaces.
I love it. So you guys make sure that you tap into what Molly has to offer. The book is excellent. I've already read it. I love her. She's definitely a source for calming the crisis. Okay. Maybe she can't fix it, but definitely calm it and help you fix it. Because at the end of the day, when it's your company and your brand, you got to do the work. You have to be willing to do the work. And take the advice of an amazing consultant that can help you move your brand to the next stages, which is if you're in crisis, it's back to where people love you. So make sure that you tap into that. Follow if you want to join us on PR Lunch Hour on Fridays just to listen in. We do have a lot of people that just listen and they take that back and they work on some things that they probably didn't even know they had an issue with. But we usually are around just to provide solutions and help and banter about some of the things that can help you grow and strengthen your brand. So thank you, Miss Molly. I am just full for the day. You have just filled my cup. I am having a great time. I'm like, I can't see her again till Friday. But
and I'm not going to be there this Friday because my webinar is at the same time. But because I wanted you to talk about, and we'll have to save it, Vanessa Bryant and the Nike shoe. And so
Okay, I'm going to save that for when you come back. So not this Friday,
good.
y'all, but next Friday, we're going to talk about that. And if you're hearing this podcast a little later, then you're going to have to tune in we'll talk about it. It'll be on our timelines, I'm sure.
I read the story and I thought of you immediately.
Oh my God. Girl, I was in my feelings about that, but appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time. My listeners, thank you for taking the time, because I know that this is something that will absolutely help you, and I've enjoyed it.
Oh, I did too. Thank you so much, Tanya. I love everything about you and your brand and what you're trying to do to help PR communicators out there. Thank you. I loved every second of it.
Thanks. You guys have a great rest of your day.